So the first step is to figure out what to do. And this conversation is a first building block towards that. We have joining us via Zoom. I'm very grateful for his presence. Kwame Sapon Asiedu. He's of course a pharmacist. He's also a fellow with CDD and a friend of the show. You hear him speak candidly on COVID very often. Kwame, it's good to see you again. Good morning.
Good morning, Kojo, and
Mm,
thanks for having me. Good
yes,
morning to Winston as well and all the listeners.
yes. I see the reassuring NHS curtain behind you, so I know you're at work. And
Yes.
and also joining us over the phone is Dr. Titus Bayo, who is the Deputy General Secretary of the Ghana Medical Association. Dr. Bayo, thanks for your time. Good morning.
Good morning, Kojo. Thank you for having me. Good morning to Kwame and then to Winston and to all our listeners.
Right.
Good morning.
So if you don't mind, Dr. Bayo, why don't you give us a bit of a reality check? Tell us what the situation is in the hospitals. We keep hearing that they are full, but what's the reality?
Well, the reality is that the numbers are going up. We began seeing in the community, in schools, is really showing up now in the hospitals, in pockets across the country. Um, and virtually everywhere, the critical cases are going up, the severe cases are going up. Um, Various units and departments are having to reactivate portions or isolation units that had been closed down because there were no cases. So that is what the situation is. And also we see that unlike the first wave or second time that we had it, even though the cases are going up, patients coming in don't appear to be bothered by it. It doesn't look like anybody. I mean, I'm talking of other non-COVID cases that are coming into the general hospitals. That general sense of awareness and caution about COVID appears to be gone. That's what we are seeing from the hospitals.
Right. Now, in light of this, the numbers growing up and the concern going down, oh, what is the concern of the medical fraternity at this point? What are we worried we might see in the coming days?
I think it's pretty obvious. It's like a script being played back the third time. Um, our major concern is that we are going to be overwhelmed in terms of the healthcare system. We are going to get patients trying to get access to healthcare with COVID who will struggle to get access because if the numbers continue in this same manner, sooner than later, you wouldn't get an ICU space. You wouldn't get beds when you need it most. The other thing is that we are getting health workers that are fatigued, that are morale is a bit low based on all that has happened. We send the caution and nobody minds you, and then again you are asked to go and battle. It is it is a call to duty. We will do it, but morale is generally low. People are feeling that look, we've just brought this upon ourselves, something that is completely avoidable. So we are going to have a situation where we have an overwhelmed system. We have workers with morale, let me say, demotivated by the very act of some of our leaders that have to pull some last string of motivation from somewhere to battle this other threat that is facing us this time round. And then our supplies definitely are going to be running out based on the numbers that are going up. I must put on record that our situation now in terms of capacity is much better than the first time. It's much better than we were in January, February. But that notwithstanding, we shouldn't kid ourselves that we have a capacity to handle numbers beyond what we are seeing. No.
Okay, let me bring in Kwame at this point. Would you say, or is it safe? I mean, I use the word safe, because there isn't a better one. Is it safe to say that we are seeing a third wave?
Kojo, I'm someone who, as you've always known me, likes to be very practical. The issue at hand is that in the last yesterday, there was an update of close to 1,000 cases just in 24 hours. You just need to go to the health service website to check, and you would know that wave or no wave, this has never happened since COVID came to Ghana. And so if you are getting that rapid updates and you are getting 300 cases a day, and I'm listening to Dr. Bayo and what he's saying, you ask yourself, does it really matter whether we are hitting a third wave, or is it more important that we start doing the things that would alter the trajectory that we are getting into, whether it's a third wave or not? And for me, what's important is to alter the trajectory, because if you listened to Dr. Bayo, capacity has gone up, but so has the number of new cases, as I said. On the other hand, behaviors have gone down, which means that there is a likelihood that if care is not taken, the pace at which patients would turn from positive cases into hospitalizations, into severe illness, and possibly death might also accelerate at the same pace. Because we have to remember that always a proportion of the positive cases are the same people who get hospitalized. A proportion of the hospitalized cases are the same people who get severely and critically ill. And a proportion of these severely and critically ill are the people who unfortunately pass away. Along this ladder, there are also the people who then get what's called long COVID and chronic disease overlay. So for me, those numbers from a public health standpoint concern me more than whether we are going into a third wave or not. Yes, I know people want to run away from the fact that we are approaching a third wave, but the writing, Kojo, is clearly on the wall, based on the numbers, based on what we are hearing from the hospitals, based on the fact that if you look at the Ghana Health Services own database on their website, our critical and severe disease numbers are gradually going up, and it's in line with these proportions that I outlaid. So that is how I'd want us to look at it.
Okay, now the reason why that question, even occurred to me is because if indeed we are seeing the beginning of what would be described as a third wave, it would mean that we didn't learn from the first or the second. What is wrong with us?
Kojo, that is why I said I would want us to look at it from the behavioral standpoint. The big question is, what is wrong with us? And the truth of the matter is there's a lot wrong with us, right from leadership to the general population. In public health, behaviors underpin healthcare outcomes, and behaviors are learned, led, and taught. That's the sad reality. So even if you move away from COVID, if you go to hospitals and you look at hospital-acquired infections, of which now COVID can be one because people are getting it in hospitals. If the leadership adopt hand washing, hand hygiene, put notices up, there's availability of detergents, sterilization of equipment takes place, it trickles down and hospital-acquired infections drop. It is the same with any infectious or contagious disease that can go into the hospital setting. So COVID is no different. The problem is, right from the top, the information has come in patches, but the behaviors that have to underpin the information that we are receiving from the top has not matched and hasn't been commensurate with the learnings that the citizenry are expected to show. And therefore, even the enforcement of the laws, which are legal requirements, which are breach of which constitute offenses, are not being enforced. Because how do you enforce it when the very people who are promulgating the laws are the ones who are breaching it? How do you then bypass them and go and implement it on the poor Ghanaian who is trying to make a living? These are the problems that have brought us here. So if you ask me, what has brought us here. It is bloody-mindedness, lack of leadership, and poor behaviors.
Dr. Bayo, so we have a new situation. There are other variants being recorded among the infected in Ghana. So the situation is not the same as what we dealt with at the beginning of 2020. It's not the same as the situation we dealt with at the end of 2020 and beginning of 2021. We have new factors. But are we hearing any new direction from leadership? Is there a new plan? Or are we expecting to fight the new problem with the old strategy?
Kodo is a difficult one. The truth is that, in fact, if I should add the new challenges that we have, all that you said is true. But in addition to that, we have a population whose attitude to this condition is now different. Yes, because we have learned some behavior which is going to be difficult to correct. That is the other dimension to this whole thing. Because when it came first, we didn't know much about it. Everybody was afraid. People were willing to comply. Then there were those conspiracy theorists who didn't. Then a law was passed that made everybody try to follow. Even those who didn't believe it were forced to follow. Now we have a situation where those who passed the law, start to break the law, have lost every moral right to enforce the law, and therefore now law enforcement, when we still have laws in place, those who are supposed to be enforcing the law are now appealing to people to do what they themselves are not doing. So this is the complexity of what we face. In addition to what you have mentioned, new variants, more easily transmissible, and then in a situation where the rest of the world appear to be well protected in terms of, and we are not. And then we are struggling to get a vaccine. Now, if you ask whether getting anything new from leadership, I would say no. And a big no, because anything new must come in new attitude and new behavior. Have we seen any new behavior that the masses can look up to and learn? No. We are still getting regional tours. We are still getting gatherings. We are still getting massive events happening. And then people will justify that. So what is the new communication here? Really, if you look at it, the same scientific facts could be used to prevent this disease or slow its growth. And that's where I say the small yes. That we don't need really very new mechanisms to overcome this disease. But we need a new attitude, because the way we have led our lives, it's demoralizing. I mean, that's the only word I can use at this moment. Because you get the figures going up, you are speaking to people across the regions, it's the situation of healthcare workers. Most of them had 2 vaccinations. Yesterday, I made a call around the country, in the upper parts of the country. Most people have just 1 single dose of the vaccine. And these are the people we are expecting to battle it. Doctors who got this single dose have gone down with this disease. Thankfully, not to the point of death or critical care, maybe because of the benefit of that single dose of vaccination. But look at the number of people out from work. So how many people are going to be available to battle this new situation that we are confronted with? So the challenges are a myriad. And I think that our risk communication from the top, too assuring, instead of telling us what the facts are most of the time. We started sounding this bell months ago. The Medical Association. Yesterday I heard the president say we have dropped our guards. When did Jamie talk about let's not drop our guards? Check our press statement. Way back. We appeal and nobody will listen. But this is what we said, that we're going to be challenged in terms of ICU beds. What did you see? Shortly, the ministry and the people came out to say that we have enough capacity. We talked about oxygen and things that may be running out if it did not work. We did not say they have run out at the time, but we just make a little projection, and you know that in January, people were sitting in wheelchairs, in hospitals, on corridors receiving oxygen. In January, February, March, in that stage. So if we said that this is going to happen, instead of looking at how to fix it, the next thing is people jump to defense and make a press conference and tell us that everything is fine. And now, maybe we are all coming to the reality now. And therefore, the narrative from leadership is changing. But this is where we are.
Wow. Kwame, we've noticed a certain prevalence in schools, universities and secondary schools. Apart from the obvious, the fact that they're all in an enclosed space, do you think there may be other drivers that are leading to such large numbers in educational institutions?
Thanks, Kojo. The thing is, if you look at the global data, it's not just Ghana. Compliance to protocols amongst people below the age of 29 years is poor. It's a global problem. Even in the UK currently, that is where the disease is situated, because they have looked at the data over the 18 months plus that COVID has been with us and realized that their risk of mortality is about 0.1%. And therefore, they don't see why 99.9% of their life should be held back by 0.1%. What they don't realize is that they run the risk of breeding new variants, like has happened with the Delta variant now, which is now showing no respecter of age. So that, dynamic globally about hospitalization and mortality in the much younger is changing. Then, if you bring it to Ghana, it is the fact that though they are in schools, there are people who go in and out of the schools. That they are becoming the hotbed of the infection is only an indication that the infection is in the community and people are going in and bringing it to a place of high concentration and congestion and allowing it to spread pretty rapidly, because we are dealing with the Delta variant, which has a reproductive number between 5 and 8. And that is quite a huge number. That is over 100% more than what came out of Wuhan. So this is what's driving it. The other thing I'd want to add quickly is the fact that we are making a few misconceptions. And I'm glad Dr. Bayo brought it up about the role vaccines will play in our current situation. Truth of the matter is, a vaccine does a number of things. The first thing is it trains the individual who has been vaccinated to identify the pathogen, which in this case is the COVID virus, if they should get exposed again. And then it allows the body to mount an immune response so that the person doesn't get very sick or sometimes doesn't even get symptoms. So there are people with double vaccinations who might get infected in our community who wouldn't know. Why am I saying this? I am saying this because the first thing the vaccine does is provide individual protection. So for that person, so that your body can identify it and can mount a response. The second thing it does is that as a large number of the people are vaccinated, it decreases the likelihood of that infection occurring. So it affords what we call community protection. Our population doesn't have community protection. And the community protection, which is what we call herd immunity, is the bigger advantage. So a lot of health professionals, like Dr. Bayo has said, though they have the personal protection, would still get infected, would still have to self-isolate, would still then put pressure on other colleagues who have to fight the infection when people get sick. And that doesn't look great. So the only thing we have, based on what I've discussed, is compliance with the protocols en masse, because that's the only thing that will give us the community protection.
Right. Now, I'd love to hear both of you on this. I'm looking at an article on citynewsroom.com. The headline is Final Year SHS Students to Spend Mid-Sem Break on Campus Over COVID-19 Concerns. It's SHS students, so I think it's midterm break. This is a decision made by the Ghana Education Service. The students are not going to come home. This follows the recording of over 2,000 SHS students positive for COVID-19. And as we know, in some schools, the prevailing strain was the Delta strain. Now, in spite of this, Dr. Nsiasari, who is the special advisor on health at the presidency, believes that schools are currently the, quote, safest place to be in the country. He says that when you take that 2,000 figure as a proportion of all of the students in secondary school, in fact, he says of all the students in tertiary, primary, and secondary school, then that figure is actually quite small. And this is a quote from him. What this means is that our teachers are doing well, the parents have done so well, and the government has also done well by providing them with all the PPE. So the secondary schools are not a bad place to be. Dr. Bayo, do you agree?
I think the argument is flawed in some aspects. It's flawed in some aspects because the school is just an extension of the community. Now, if you talk about boarding,
oh dear.
then
Dr. Bayo, can you hear us?
yes,
Okay, the line is not very stable. I wonder if you could perhaps reposition yourself. It seems like a signal problem. Hello? All right, let's see if we can reconnect with Dr. Bayo. In the meantime, I'd love to hear you on this as well, Kwame.
Kwame, thanks, Kudu. Like Titus was saying, the whole statement is flawed. And it is flawed because the schools are a microcosm of the general society. If you take the secondary schools, let's try and compartmentalize it. You're dealing with a virus that is not infectious between 10 and 14 days after someone is infected. The students have been in school for a very long time, which then means that if they had taken the infection into school, especially the boarding schools, the run rate is past. So these are new infections that have been brought in from the community. Now the schools have congestion and they become a bedrock of explosion. How then do you tell me that a place that gets a reintroduction of an infection and suddenly goes into an explosion is the safest place? That cannot be. And you see, it's these denial strategies that for me are becoming concerning.
Denial strategy. How can denial even be a strategy? Dr. Bayo, I think...
It is a strategy. It is a strategy, Kojo, and a lot of people use it in healthcare. I mean, I'd add this. This morning, the WHO has come out with a projection that about 100,000 people are going to die globally between now and the end of the Olympic Games, which is only in 3 weeks.
Wow.
That should scare everybody. And they said majority of these are going to happen in, environments where vaccinations are low. So that should tell you that we are not dealing with a normal situation. And for me, when you are in such a situation and you find people making these denial arguments, it must be concerning to us all. And that was why I said it emanates from poor leadership, poor learning, and bloody-mindedness. That is why we're here.
All right, Dr. Bayo, I guess you were addressing the same issue.
exactly. I think Kwame has just answered it the way I would have said it. I would support for schools to be open on a different or different leg, but not on this very flawed scientific explanation. I think the basis why we say it's flawed is just as Kwame has explained. I wouldn't go over that because of time. But if you tell us that education is necessary, therefore the risk we put to school, we would understand that. If an epidemiologist, right, scientist, anybody who understands disease distribution, this argument cannot hold. I think that's the
Right. All right. So now, I mean, let's think of the solution. Okay, the way forward. Now, I'm a little bit concerned. In fact, let me read this. Somebody sent this to me. I want to read it. It says, a good friend went to a wedding in Accra last week where protocols were not observed, and now everyone, including the bride and groom and her 70-year-old unvaccinated mother, are sick. Some are on admission. Perfectly avoidable and unnecessary. But yeah, even the president speaking at this point will not prevent crazy gatherings because he himself has attended a few of his own. This is the sentiment of somebody, observing whether or not at this point any message that comes from leadership will make a difference. Is that your assessment? I'll start with you, Kwame. Is that your assessment that at this point messaging from leadership won't help because of their own actions? And if that's the case, then what will help?
You see, Kojo, this borders on the phrase moral high ground, and whether you have it or you've lost it. And Titus started very early in this conversation and said the moral high ground has been lost by leadership. But then I would rephrase it and say, what actually is leadership? Kojo, you are a leader holding this conversation today. Titus is a leader through the GMA. We are all leaders in one way, shape, or form. So if our political leadership, and that is why I'm disaggregating the word leader, our political leadership has lost the moral high ground. It behoves on other forms of leadership from civil society, from the media, from other interested groupings to take the mantle on and drum the message down. That is the only way we are going to get through this. Because let me be honest with you, Kojo, amongst our political leadership, amongst our public health leadership, majority of them, to the best of my knowledge, would have had at least one vaccine. And if you listen to how I explain the protection vaccines conferred, the likelihood of them getting very sick, even if they have one vaccine, is decreased by about 64%. The likelihood of them getting hospitalized is about close to 77, 78% down. What about Kweku Menu, who is working in Agbogloshi, Kejetia or Kanish Market, who's not had a vaccine, who has been made to believe that his age is such that even if he gets infected, he's likely to show symptoms, let alone get hospitalized, or let alone get severely ill. If you listen to the message you read, now the infection hasn't just affected the bride, the groom, the attendees, but the 78-year-old. And that is where the disease is more lethal. So who lost the moral high ground here? Where was the leadership in that family as well? And for me, that is where it's becoming key now. The churches must show leadership. The mosques must show leadership. Yesterday, I saw footage from the end of the Muslim fast, and I had chills. There must be leadership there as well. So, Kojo, the answer now is political, moral high ground, zilch. Leadership, we still have adequate leadership if we want to take the mantle on. But I would remind you, anyone who goes into that form of leadership should also be prepared for the negativity that comes with that tough play, because you will get expletives thrown at you. And that's how I'd want to leave it.
Dr. Bayo, how can the medical fraternity help? You've already talked about a certain reduced sensitivity amongst patients, those who are in hospital for other reasons. How can the medical fraternity help to change this behavior, which is at the center of the most recent spread?
Kojo, from the point of view of the medical fraternity, I think for us in the hospital, this reality of this disease has never been lost on us. And I need to emphasize that. Even when others thought we're out of the woods, we kept emphasizing that, look, this thing is still real. It's a present danger. Until we have a population that is not susceptible to the virus, the danger is real. So within our hospitals, we are still doing our best to remind our patients who are coming in to observe all the protocols, the relatives that are following or accompanying them to observe all the protocols, and encouraging even health workers to obey the protocols themselves and be champions in their community. But you see, you are overwhelmed when your numbers are few and everybody else thinks that nothing is happening. If you think about leadership, as Kwame has alluded to, I think that even though our political leadership appears to have lost all ground, words at this point will not be helpful. They should demonstrate some action. If we see, because whether we like it or not, people still look up to them. So let us see the leaders in society at different levels showing that this thing is a reality. Not just speaking, but in words. Let's see functions that His Excellency has been called to. It's been announced publicly he's not attending those functions because of COVID. Ministers that have been called to functions should say that, look, this function, the number is too large. We are not attending because of COVID. We are going to expose other people. Because you see, if you are protected because you have had your double vaccine, and then you lead people in who are not vaccinated at all into a mass gathering, how do we describe you? I cannot leave that to Ghanaians to make that decision. Because if somebody who is fully vaccinated is calling you to a gathering and you have no protection, you have not even a single vaccine, and you are trooping there to join, how do we judge that person who is making the call? And how do we assess you, the person who is following? If you have no knowledge at all, we'll pardon your ignorance. But if you know that this disease is real, and you know that the vaccine helps, and you know that you have not received it, and you attend such functions, then you need to assess yourself. And then we will continue to call on the individual. Let's take personal responsibility. If everybody around you is not using their mask, you still use their mask. There is some level of protection that you can get. Encourage your loved ones to use it. Teach your children to use it. Teach your children to practice the hand hygiene. Wherever you find yourself, continue to make a statement. Look, we are protecting our healthcare system. Even if you think you are vaccinated and we allow this disease to go to a high level, condition might not be COVID, but you may come to a hospital and struggle because all our attention is gone to COVID. Let's not forget about that. In the past, we had to cancel most of our surgeries because we devoted most of our anesthetists to go and attend to COVID. And people with gynae cases that needed surgeries could not have them. So the impact of this is significant if we allow it to degenerate. So I think from all of us, let's take personal responsibility and tell the next person, and not just tell, but do it for the next person to see that you are doing it so that they will also do it.
Okay. I want to say a big thank you to you, Dr. Titus Bill, Deputy General Secretary of the Ghana Medical Association. But of course, you are also, in addition to that, a member of the Infectious Diseases Committee at the Ghana Medical Association. Also, Kwame Sapon-Asiedu, Dr. Kwame Sapon-Asiedu is a pharmacist and a fellow at CDD Ghana. And we thank you both for your time with us this morning. Goodness, I'm worried. But let's not panic. Okay, let's understand what needs to be done. All right. You need to remember that it's not over. You need to make that last push. I know that we are fatigued. I know that we're tired. I know that we've lived with this thing for God knows how long. And it feels like at this point we are living with it. In fact, that's the message we got, that we must now live with it. Yeah, live with it doesn't mean keep spreading it, because people will die. People will die. So please, live with it means live without it touching you or the people you love. Live protected from it. Wear your mask. Wash your hands. When you get to the shop and there's a sink there, don't walk past it and enter the shop because open them and you are living with it. Wash your hands. That's how you are supposed to live with it. Teach your children, please don't give up. don't give up on the protocols, no matter what you see. If you see someone else doing a funeral, that doesn't mean that it's okay for you to do one too. And especially to those of us who are vaccinated, don't be selfish. Don't be selfish. You make up less than 1% of the population. Over 99% of us don't have the protection that you have. Don't be selfish. Don't organize events and call people to come and risk their lives just because you are protected. We need to change our behavior. All of us. All of us. Otherwise, the story will not be printable. Thank you. We'll be back with more. Corruption Watch has uncovered lots and lots of money unaccounted for. But somehow, it is still good news. Stay tuned for details.
Hello. Oh, Charlie, how be? Bro, I need some help. Right, did my money all finished. And month no end, so I make hot pass. I fit see some small loan for your side, I bet.
Oh, bro, I make Charlie, I make hot